This is Leetcode problem 9, palindrome number, and in this problem we're creating a function that takes an integer and we're checking to see if that integer is a palindrome. And a palindrome is just is anything that you can read it the same forward and backwards. So as an example, 121 is a palindrome because if you read it backwards it's still 121. And this problem can be solved in two ways. The first way involves turning our input into a string. So let's say our input is 123, for example. The first thing we would do is create a new variable and we'll store the string version of our input in there. And then we'll create another variable, we'll call it reversed, and we'll store the reversed version of our input as a string into that variable, and then we'll check to see if these two variables are equal to each other, and if they are, then our input is a palindrome. So the other ways, we can actually solve this without turning our input into a string, and so I'm going to show you both ways to solve it. So the first way, we'll start by creating a string variable, so we'll call it str, and then we'll make it equal to the string version of our input, and our input is x, and then we'll say dot to string to get the string version and store it into str. Then we'll create another variable which we're going to call reversed, and this is going to store the reverse version of our input as a string. And so right now we'll just make it an empty string for now. And then in order to create, we're gonna go from our input and reverse it and store it into this variable. So in order to do that, we're going to use a for loop, and we're going to say let y of str. And what that's doing, like let's say for example our input is 451, the first thing we did, we turned it into a string, and then we store it into str. So what this loop is doing, each time this loop is running, on each iteration, y is going to be equal to whatever index we're on. So on the first iteration of this loop, we're on index 0. So the 0th index of this string in this case would be 4. So y would be equal to 4 on the first pass through this loop, and then on the second pass y is going to be equal to 5, and on the last pass y is going to be equal to 1. So we can use that to store all of those numbers into reversed backwards. So we'll say reversed is equal to y plus reversed. And what that's doing is, on the first pass, y is equal to 4, and that's a string, and reversed is equal to an empty string. And when you concatenate those two things together, 4 and an empty string is equal to 4. And then on the second pass, reversed is now equal to 4, and y is now equal to 5. So when we're adding these two together, y is 5 and reversed is 4. When you concatenate those, the answer is 54, or 5-4. So reversed is now equal to 5-4. And then on the last pass through this loop, y is equal to 1. So 1 plus reversed, which is 5, 4, is equal to 1, 5, 4. 1, 5, 4. And that's the reversed version of our input. So that's what this loop is doing. It's reversing our input and storing it into our variable called reversed. And I'm just going to console log this so you can see. So if I run that, we're going to use our test cases here. So x is equal to 1, 2, 1, and you can see on the first pass y was equal to 1, so our input is 1, 2, 1, y is 1, reversed is nothing, so 1 plus nothing is 1, and then on the second pass y is 2, and so in reversed is 1. So 2 and 1 concatenated together is 2, 1. And on the last pass, y is 1. And reversed is 2, 1 from before. So 1 plus 2, 1 is 1, 2, 1. And so now we can say, we can check if those two values are the same, our string value and reversed. And if it's the same, then we'll return, we can say str is equal to reversed. And if those two values are the same, then it's going to equal true and return true. And if they're not the same, then it's going to return false. So that's the first solution. We'll run that. And it should be green across the board. So it's green. That's the first solution. And then, like I said, we can also solve this without turning x into a string. And in order to do that, well, first we'll start by making it a little bit faster. So we know that with when the input is a negative number, if we reverse it, so if it's negative 1, 2, 1, for example, if we reverse that, it's not going to be a palindrome because it's the reverse version is 1, 2, 1, negative. So we can say always return false if our input is negative. So if x is less than 0, which would mean that x is negative, our input is negative, then return false. And if I run that, then that test case should be green and everything else should fail. So if we get negative 1, 2, 1, then it should be false. So then we're going to need to copy our input into another variable so we can manipulate that variable without manipulating our input variable. So we'll say let copy equal x, and then we'll create another variable for our reversed integer, which we're going to make it equal to 0 for now. And then to store the reversed integer into this variable here, we're going to use a while loop. So we'll say while copy is not equal to 0. While copy is not equal to 0, we're going to continue this loop. So we'll say reversed is equal to reversed times 10 plus copy modulus 10, and then copy equals math.floor copy divided by 10. And so what's going on here, let's say, for example, we'll use 1, 2, 3 as an example. So let me go here. So let's say our input is 1, 2, 3. So what's happening here is, to start, we're copying this value into copy. So we're copying our input into a new variable, which is called copy. So copy is equal to 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 is not equal to 0. So we enter the loop. Reversed is equal to 0, and 0 times 10 is 0. Copy is 1, 2, 3, and when you do modulus 10 to a number, it gets rid of all of the numbers except for the last one. So 3. So when you do 3 plus 0, the answer is 3. So reversed is now equal to 3. So then on the next iteration, well, actually, before we do that, the copy is, after we do that, we store 3 into reversed. Copy is 1, 2, 3. So we divide it by 10, and what that does is it makes it 12.3, and math.floor gets rid of the decimal. So now copy is equal to 12. So we'll say copy is equal to 12 now. So on the next iteration, copy is 12, so it's not equal to 0. Reversed is equal to 3. 3 times 10 is 30. Copy is 12. 12 modulus 10 is 2. 30 plus 2 is 32. And so now 32, we're storing that into our reversed integer. And then copy is 12. 12 divided by 10 makes this 1.2. And then when we use math.floor on that number, it makes it equal to 1. And then we'll store that value into copy. So now copy is 1. And since copy is 1 and is still not equal to 0, we enter the loop again and we say reversed is now 32. 32 times 10 is 320, and copy is 1. And when you use modulus 10 on it, there's nothing to the left of this number, so it just equals 1 after you use modulus 10 on it. And then 1 plus 320 is 321. And copy is 1 here, so when you multiply that by, when you multiply copy by, or you divide it by 10, it's, the answer is 0.1. And then when you use math.floor on it, copy becomes 0. And when copy is 0, we exit the loop. And we have our reversed value. So x, our input, was 123, and reversed is 321. So that's how that works. And now we can just say return, we'll say return reversed is equal to x, which is our input. And so if the reverse version of our integer is equal to our input integer, then it's a palindrome and it's going to return true. And if not, then it's going to return false. So let's go ahead and run that. So let's see where we messed up. So x is less than 0. Copying reversed is equal to 0, while copy is not equal to 0. Okay. I forgot to add all this stuff back. There we go. Alright, so this should work this time. So return, I'm going to say x is equal to reversed, and run that. Alright, so that's green across the board. And that's the solution to solving this problem without turning your input into a string. And that's it. Peace.